cool to see you here. You're a speaker I really look up to. I've seen you on stage, and we just spent 3 hours in the car driving from a speaker gathering together, me and you. Thank you so much for being here.
Lovely to be invited, Max. You're a terrific guy, and we had a great time, and you're a great speaker. So
Thanks.
I think it's really fun to discuss this topic with you.
Yeah, and I think all speakers have so much to learn from each other, but you're one of the best storytellers in Norway, and I would say maybe Scandinavia, maybe Europe, you can see, but you're such an amazing storyteller. When I heard you 2 weeks ago, I got goosebumps, like when you tell the stories. So if we can just get the listeners like a quick recap, who is Svein Harald? Like, what topic do you speak on, and why do you think businesses book exactly you to be the speaker in their events?
Well, first of all, the topic I speak about is courage. Actually, it's courage and curiosity. From my standpoint, I think that is the most important traits for a human being to cope with everything that happens in our lives, both in our private life and also in corporate life, because things are happening so fast, and we are meeting so many challenges in every aspect of life. And in order to cope with that, we feel fear. And in order to cope with fear and handle fear, you need courage and you need curiosity. So that is actually the core topics that I talk about. And I started with this in 2010. And at that time, lots of people talked about courage, but no one actually had taken the position as the courage speaker. So I decided I want to be Mr. Courageous, and that is, or Mr. Brave. So that is the Norwegian name I have in the speaking business.
Amazing. And did you know at that time, back like how many? That's like quite a few years back in time. Did you know that your main that you were a good storyteller, or is that a skill you developed and worked very hard on? Like how do you become because you don't use many slides, you use powerful stories.
I did not know that I was a good storyteller, but I've always loved to tell stories and jokes with my friends and in social gatherings. So I love that. And then when I started to speak, I did what most speakers do: show facts, tell them about facts. And the facts are interesting, but it's get boring and people can't cope with it. Then I started to tell other people's stories. That was actually how I started. When I started storytelling, I started to tell story about Sylvester Stallone, how he succeeded, and other people. But it was not until I started to tell my own stories that were not that great compared to Sylvester Stallone's. But my own stories, they were relatable for the audience, and it was my own. So it was, what do you call it, authentic?
Yeah, authentic.
And then when I started to do that, I started to build stories the way that you should build stories, so that you create a tension in the story and cliffhangers and so on.
Yeah, how do this is a very interesting point, because I speak with a lot of agents across Europe, and Nils, who represents me and you, we're in the same agency. For those who don't know, they often say that as a speaker, you can't focus so much on you and your story. You need to focus on return of investment and provide practical tips and advice that businesses can use. How do you take that personal story and connect it with a key takeaway point or value to the audience? How did you crack that code? And can you just share how that looks like from a storyteller perspective?
Yeah, I think that is a crucial part, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The story on its own might be interesting, but if you can't make that story and deliver a point, something that they can learn from that story, then the story is not relevant. It's nice story, but it's not relevant. So that is of course the important thing. What I just tell you what I have done. I have made an Excel sheet with topics from A to Z. For instance, if I have sales, if I have motivation, under the topic sales, I have many stories about sales that I have prepared, and then I have a column which is what is a takeaway from this story that is relevant for you, and how can you use this in your business or in your life. So I have story. What's the point, and what is the benefit of doing what I've talked about?
Yeah, I think that's amazing, because then you basically focus. You start with the audience in mind, and then work yourself back, instead of being like, hey, now 20 minutes about me, and let's
Yep, but the reason I use story about me is because it's authentic, it's relatable. People have the same challenges as I have had, so it makes them emotionally involved more than if I tell someone else's story. But I do that as well, of course, if it's a good story, and we love stories. But my stories, there is a very crucial point I have to mention with regards to the stories I tell. I try not to be the hero in my stories.
I remember that 2 weeks ago, you were so humble. You were so like, it was amazing, mixing your story and the other one. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but that is important, especially in Norway. We have this janteloven, that you are not going to be someone so you're not going to brag about yourself. So that is sometimes I have to take and change the story a little bit from what the real life. So sometimes I have been brilliant and done something great, but if I brag about that, it's not going to land well. So instead I invent someone, maybe just to make that story easier to consume for the audience.
How many gigs a year do you usually do in Norway? Like usually, like a roughly ballpark?
Well, it depends, but maybe between 70 and 100 or something like that.
70. Wow. It's really impressive. And so I ask this question to every person in this podcast, and it is, how do you open your talk? How do you open and how do you close it? Like, how do you captivate the audience? What's your opener?
Of course, every speaker is told that the most important thing is the opening, to catch it or draw the audience attention towards yourself. And I think lots of speakers don't understand how important that is. You have actually to demand and command the room. So if you don't have a powerful start, you might lose the audience, unless you're a really good speaker and you can draw them their attention further on in the talk. But it's really important. And I've had one opening that I've started with, and I did it for consecutive 7 years or so. One opening every time.
Okay.
And the reason for that, it worked every time. And the story goes like this. It's very short, but when I'm introduced by moderator, I come on stage, and then I say, I love to be introduced by someone, because I hate to introduce myself. And the reason for that is, the first time when I was in my first job after my studies, I started to work in an organization, and we were 10 new employees in that organization, and we had a kickoff. And then the new people were supposed to introduce themselves. And then, what you do when you know and I was the last one. What you do, I asked the audience, what you do when you know you are going to introduce yourself and you are waiting for the others when they are introducing themselves. And then the audience said, oh yeah, you plan what you're going to say. Yes, of course. You don't listen to other people. And then I said, and then I planned, should I say that I was born in Haugesund? No. Maybe that's to go back too far, but I come from Langesund, that I have been to officer training school. And when I planned this in my head, I was listening to the other people introducing themselves. And have you noticed how confident everyone else seems when they introduce themselves? And then the audience laugh. And then I said, and then I became so nervous. But I continued to plan, and I said, okay, I have an honors degree from Edinburgh. And then suddenly the sales director, he stood up and said, and now we have a new guy in sales. He can stand up and introduce himself. And when I stood up, my mind went blank. Everything I had planned, it just disappeared. And the only thing I managed to say was, hi, my name is Svein Harald Røine. Remember the name. And then the audience laughed. And then I've told them who I am, my background.
Yeah.
And I'm cocky. Remember the name. In Norwegian, merkte navnet. And that worked every time. I got the label, hello, remember the name, or merkte navnet. I got that label lots of times.
Okay, so powerful story, that's your way to go. Powerful story, humble, try to get some humor in, and I saw you did some audience involvement there. So in the beginning, you're like, hey, how do you introduce yourself? So yeah, amazing. So if we dive a bit into like when you are on conference and you see other speakers, like what's the most common mistake you see speakers make that just instantly weaken their presence? I remember one thing you told me in the car, which we both agreed on, is it's very annoying if a speaker goes frantically back and forth. If they just frantically go back and forth, it's very annoying for us speakers and the audience. What else like do you see like a common mistake we should avoid?
It's really true. Walking on stage, horrible. Looking at your own presentation, death sin. I've seen really famous people standing with the back towards the audience.
Oh.
It's horrible. I mean, it's so bad. They don't understand why they're on the stage, because the reason you are on the stage is not because of you, it's because of the audience. You have been invited for the audience. The audience are supposed to learn from you. And when you stand with the back towards the audience, I mean, you don't understand why you're there. And if you don't know your topic well enough that you have to read your own PowerPoint, how can you expect the audience to remember you and the points? It's really ridiculous. So that is a trouble, as you mentioned, walking relentless on the stage and not knowing this stuff, but also don't getting the attention from the start. I think that is really important, and lots of people don't do that. And the audience they don't own you anything. So you have to command the control of the audience, and you have to find your way to do that. But lots of people, I have heard so many come up and say, well, I'm not a good speaker. Of course, we have heard that many times before, but also, that, and I can feel that they are not good. And also, being extremely nervous and say that you are nervous. Some people say that if you do that, that is relatable and people can connect with you when you say it. But I don't think you don't want the audience to feel sorry for you.
No. And also, like, I remember like last time we were together you were in Hafjell, right? Yeah, we went snow kiting together. I think Nils said something good there. Is like, don't make excuses on stage. Like, if you have a picture that is pixelated, don't go like, oh guys, I'm sorry, this is bad quality. Like, either get a better quality picture or just show as it is.
Yeah.
Why do you say sorry? So I think that's a good one. Yeah, don't make the audience feel sorry for you.
But you also have to know your stuff, know what you're going to talk about. Don't read. And I think, of course, the most common mistake that they have too much on slides, too much.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't use slides is because I don't want the competition. I want the audience to look at me. And when I talk and I tell a story, if I switch to a slide, I break the connection. I want their total control. I want to spellbound the audience so that they look at me and I have their total attention.
But you can do it because you're such a good storyteller.
If you have PowerPoints, that should somehow be so easily understood that the break from you should be as short as possible. If you have lots of bullet points, lots of text and different things, they break away from you, and then you are not the story or the presenter anymore. It's the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen your PowerPoints, and they are so easily understood that I look at you, I look at the PowerPoint bank, and back to you, no problem. And I haven't lost you for a long time. So I think that is a major mistake. People don't understand. You break the connection with the audience if you have a lot of texts that they have to read on the PowerPoint.
Yeah. When I work with speakers, we usually have a rule like bullet points are forbidden, because people are, I think some speakers don't realize that the audience read fast. So most likely, if you read the bullet points, the audience have already read it before you presented it. So then you are like halfway and they read it and they're already bored. So you completely lose the audience. Okay, for some speakers who are maybe used to doing like a talk for 20 or 100 people and they suddenly get a big gig. I'm getting a gig now in front of 800 people. I'm a bit nervous. It's been like 10 years since I did that big. But like if I walk on stage and it's like 500 people or more, what should I focus on in the first minute to truly claim the room? Do you have some tips? Is it like look around and get eye contact with everyone? Like how do I get the first 60 seconds right, Svein Harald, on that gig I'm doing in May? What's your advice to me?
Well, I have seen some people that the way they claim the room the first 60 seconds. And the most important thing is to know exactly what you are going to say the first 60 seconds and practice it so that it's like, yes, you go there and it's on autopilot, if you understand. You know it that well that you really know, you don't hesitate. I think that is really important, and especially if you're nervous, then it's even more important to do it. So practice the first 60 seconds, because if you manage to come through or go through the first 60 seconds with success, then you lose the fear and you can move on. So that is important. And what you're going to do, that is that there are different ways to do it, to demand this attention from the audience, but because that's what you want to do. You want to claim their attention or demand it. And one thing is by asking a provocative question, for instance.
Make them wake up.
Yes. So you or a provocative claim or something. You say something that might provoke them or provoke their intellect, or like a shocking statement that is possible. I've also seen you can also do something that make them wonder what is he doing now. So you make them interested.
Like what?
The best I've seen. I don't know if you have seen Muhammad Khatami's talk.
No.
I think you should go on YouTube and see it. Muhammad Khatami, he was world champion of public speaking in 2015.
Okay.
And his talk is called The Power of Words. I actually met him in Oslo a week ago. He was here giving a talk for Toastmasters International. And that's where he won. And he gets on the stage and he has a cigarette lighter and a cigarette, and he put the cigarette in his mouth and he's starting to light it. And then you hear the audience, oh, hey. And then he looks up and he says, what? Like, am I doing? And then he had total control of the audience. He just had this cigarette, he was going to light it on the stage and people reacting, and what? Fantastic. And that talk is one of the best talks I have seen. And he's a storyteller now. Yeah. And he used props.
I'll have a look at that. I'll have a look at that one. What's your take on, like, some speakers use like raise your hand or something? Not a fan, or like what?
No problem. But
no problem.
It must, if you have raise your hand question, it must be a challenging question, not a okay, raise your hand if you had sex last week. I mean, but if it's a boring question to raise your hand, you don't engage. So it must be somehow provocative.
Yeah.
So, I think that is important. It can't be boring.
Yeah. So and another thing is, like, okay, so you manage. I totally agree about the first 60 seconds. Just to add a point there, speaker gave advice to the night before. See if you can actually go on stage and do the opening a few times, and that just you get to feel the room, and you get to reduce a lot of the nervousity when you were actually on the stage, right? But yeah, those 60 seconds.
I agree if you can do that. For me, it's really comforting to just go up on the stage and look out, even if it's empty there. And I always do that, of course, not necessarily the day before because it's of practical reasons, but at least in a break, in a conference, when the audience are for lunch or whatever, then I go on the stage and I just out and I just feel.
Yes, feel the energy.
The power and the energy, and look forward to it. Yeah, so it's a good.
And how do we use the stage effectively? For example, like if a speaker comes to you and you would coach them on stage use, how would you? What kind of advice do you usually give to speakers? So if we do the basics, like I really want to improve my stage presence, is there some cool tips you have that how to be better on the stage? Walking and looking. And
I am from a school, as I mentioned, that I don't like walking aimlessly on the stage.
Yeah.
So I have maybe this Japanese kung fu or martial arts theory in my head. You know, if you are going to be a good martial art, what do you call it?
Yeah. It's that sounding still here too, but yeah.
Athletes. So, They say you have to be grounded. You stand with your feet really grounded and you have all your strength in your feet and your legs. So you stand squarely and tight on the ground on the stage. And when I have courses in helping people to be better on stage, I ask them just to, if you stand firmly and then you tilt your hips, so you lean on one hip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you see the difference on the authority, you lose authority just by suddenly standing on one hip instead of standing on both legs. So just standing firmly on both legs demands authority. So, and in martial arts, you have the strength in your upper body. So you can still have a lot of energy, even though you stand still on the front of the stage in the middle, like I do. I always go to the front of the stage in the middle and I stand there. And then I use my upper body, my arms, I do everything. And I have never heard that people say that I don't have energy on the stage. Never. I stand still on the front of the stage. So that's the first thing I coach. But when you are moving on the stage, you have to do it with a purpose. So if you walk on the stage, there has to be a purpose for doing it. So then I look at the stage more like a theater scene or theater stage. So when I instead, because you say I'm a good storyteller, and I appreciate you saying that, but I try to show stories as well instead of just telling them. So if I say that, and then he walked to the door, and then I walk towards a door on the stage that is not there, but so that the audience think they remember that the door is there. So when I talk about going to that door later, I go to the same place so people know that that is where that door is. And where is the bed? There is a bed over there. And then I walk over and then I do something on that bed. So they know that the bed is there, but there is no. So somehow I try to plant in the head of the audience a stage with props, but they are not there.
Okay. I'm tilting. I need to change that. When you said that, my heart sunk. Like I'm always tilting, so I need to fix that posture. I used to have a coffee and I tilt to the side, but yeah, I'm gonna try it next time to. Boom.
Yeah, it is. I think maybe I will be. I get some heat from this, but women, when they stand on one hip, it's quite sexy. But on stage, when they do it, it's not sexy. It's taking away their power. And they very often stand on this one hip and lean on one hip because it's comfortable and that's what they do in normal life. And it's kind of way of seducing, but it's not when you do it on stage, then you lose your power. So I think try it and see how it works. For me, it's been one of the ways that I command the room and I have the control of the scene.
You tell your stories with such an energy and authenticity. How do you bring strong energy without looking like you're trying too hard? Like Armor, for example, he listens to the music and like sad music and Metallica and all of this before he goes on stage to get into the different moods he's going to be in. How do you get into that moment to make it look real? Because it feels very real and authentic. But do you have any like mental exercises before, or how do you get into the storyteller mode on stage?
I think I'm quite lucky that it comes very easily for me.
Okay.
So I know that my my colleagues in speaker colleagues, that they have different routines on how to, like you said now. I don't have that. It's quite interesting because Nils Apeland, he says that he has heard my stories lots of times, and he says that it feels like I've heard them for the first time every time. And for me, that is the best compliment I can get. But somehow I live into these stories, and I've told them so many times now that I know them by heart, and I know where to put pressure, where to have breaks, to let it sink in with the audience before I can move on. But when I get on the stage, I get all the energy from when I walk up that stair, and on the stage I get everything I need to deliver. But there is one more thing. If I'm not nervous, I don't perform that well. I have had a couple of 2, 3 over the years that I felt so confident when I went on stage, and those are probably the worst talks I've had.
Interesting.
So if I don't have this nervousness and fear and nervousness, it's the same thing that floats in our brain, the same chemistry. So I try to demand to be fearful when I go on the stage. And if I don't feel enough fear, I ask the moderator to say to the audience, and Svein Harald says that he hopes you have very, very high expectations. When the moderator say that to the audience, then I feel this butterflies in my stomach come, and then I have to be really sharp on.
Amazing. Most new speakers are so scared about they're always nervous, and I'm saying it's good. If you're not nervous, you're something is off, because then
because then it doesn't mean enough for you.
Yeah.
It's with everything. When you went over to that girl that you were interested in, of course you were nervous. If you hadn't been nervous, then that wouldn't matter so much. So I think that if you're not nervous when you go on stage, it doesn't matter enough for you. And if it doesn't matter enough for you, how can you perform the best? And listen to the World Championship or Olympics now. Every one of the athletes say that they are really nervous when they start.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. We have to embrace that.
Yeah. And so we are, like, to round up, like, we are.
Can I say just one thing? You said how I get energy. I think I get a lot of energy from the way I use both the body but also the voice. That I use a lot of variation in the voice, from very low voice, so that the audience are drawn, they lean forward, and then I scream, and then I have long breaks, and then so doing that also creates energy.
I know, like, I really respect your time, and we're a bit like over scheduled, but I have 2 questions left, and we can try to navigate them. Okay, great. So this is, like, I'm very curious about, because when you tell your stories, it seems very effortless in a good way, and that it comes from the heart, and you're just telling a story. How do you rehearse them? Because, for example, for me, I don't have like that many dramatic stories, but I usually write the manuscript, practice each line like it's a theater play. So I know roughly my time per slide and what I'm going to say, and maybe 5-10% I deviate, but I know roughly each sentence. How is, like, with you when you create new material? Do you practice it 60 times over and over again? Can you tell us about your way of becoming so good at telling these stories?
It's quite interesting. I had my own show traveling around Norway, and it started on one of the most famous scenes in Norway, the Chat Noir. And there I had a new story that I hadn't practiced. I hadn't practiced the story more than once, and that was when I had this first run through.
Yeah.
And I was so uncertain about it, so I asked Nils, because he was there, should I just drop it? And he said, no, go for it. So I did it for the second time on that stage with full packed audience. And then I had to relive, because I was reliving something that had happened to me. And the story was, and it was a really tough story, because it was when I had a breakup with my ex-girlfriend, and I felt so alone, and it was terrible, and I was so ashamed that I hadn't managed to stay in this relationship that I had given everything to, and we'd moved in together. So I didn't have the courage to tell it to my family and to my friends. And what I did, I ended up going to my boat, and this was in October, and it was cold, and I have a 121-foot day cruiser. It's not supposed to stay in during winter or autumn. And I went to that on the stage, pretended that I crawled into that boat. I went on my knees and I crawled into the boat, and I found a blanket and I put on top of me, and I was lying there on the stage and looking up and talking to myself what went through my mind, and then stood up and had the takeout of this. So I managed to do that, and the audience said that was probably the high point of the whole talk.
I heard stories about this story, Svein Harald. Like, I heard stories from Nils and others, like this boat story. So he's a legend in the Norwegian speaker community. So this story, I heard about it.
You have, yeah. So that actually I did. But I think the only reason I had the courage to do that is because I felt so comfortable with being on stage and knowing that I can fuck up on stage, but it's no problem. I think that is maybe one of the, when you come to the point that you understand that if you fuck up on the stage, it's not the end of the world. You can move on. The audience will forgive you, and so on. So I think that that was probably one of the reasons that I managed to do that. But to the question, otherwise I practice the stories, but I don't do it in front of the mirror, never, because that is unrealistic compared to standing in front of an audience. So I'd rather do it in front of my living room or something, and I can record it on camera. That is also a possibility. And then I can see how you can learn a lot of in yourself.
So I think, I think what we want to say to people listening is that you put in a lot of effort. That is, some other speakers look at you on stage and like, oh, he's so good, but it goes a lot of hours in to actually, you perfect them.
I practice them. I do that. And one of the reasons it's so important to practice them is because then you can put in the breaks, the silence, know where to do it. If you don't practice it, you don't feel where it's natural to leave the space for the audience to consume what you're saying. Because that is probably one of the problems with lots of speakers, that they don't give the audience time to consume or reflect or feel what you are talking about. Silence.
How do you get comfortable? How do you get comfortable with silence? I'm so uncomfortable with it. I am working with it. I even put on some slides like a red circle, like it's a mental note for me that here I need to let the audience pause. But like, how do you get comfortable with the silence? Because I tend to rush through it, and I know I need to work on it.
It feels horrible. you have to understand that it's a feeling that you're definitely going to have when you are silent. But what I have done as a trick for me with regards to silence is that I divide the audience in 4, like 2 groups in the back and 2 in the front. And when I come to a point where is silence, I decide that, okay, now I'm going to look at all 4 groups.
A genius.
And when I do that, I get enough silence time so that they can consume what I'm saying, think about it.
Great.
So that is a trick I have.
And okay, I'm going to try that one next time. I really love that one because it forces you to. It's like driving a car and you count meters to the front car, like to 1001, 1002. You have to you get the. But like it's really interesting that the one story you winged kind of went so good, and I get the fact that you can have that attitude, like it's okay to fail. It can go wrong in front of the audience, but I'm so worried about winging with the time aspect. Like it's okay if it's an internal event, and if you go 5 minutes over time, you are kind of forgiven. But did you have that fear on that conference? Like, what if you tell the story, you haven't practiced it, so you haven't timed it? How did you cope with that?
Well, actually, on that was my show, and people came and paid
to me.
So that was a little bit different. But normally, well, I think that one of my challenges is to keep time. That is a challenge. But I've learned that I have to cut material, and you don't speak faster when you see that time is limited. When I don't use PowerPoint, I'm lucky because no one knows what I'm going to say, and I don't skip the PowerPoint at the end and so on. It's a little bit convenient. I made it convenient for myself just to without PowerPoints. But when you have a stack of PowerPoints and you're going through, and you have a really important one in the end, and then you see that you have a challenge to reach the time, and you skip past someone, that of course doesn't look that good for the audience when you do that. So
you can kind of try to say like, hey guys, I want you to close your eyes and imagine, and it's just like, but it doesn't.
That would actually be a quite fun way to do it. Now I want all of you to close your eyes and just think for 5 seconds, what are you going to take away from this talk, and then that would be great.
Okay, so to wrap up, like, okay, if you could give me an advice, like, hey, Max, for the next 30 days to be better on stage, like, if you would give me like a 30-day plan, not day by day, but just in general, like next month, if you want to improve your stage presence, okay, I'm going to start with standing grounded and not like lean like I used to. But if you can just take 1 minute, like, hey, Max, try these things next 30 days to become better at stage presence. What could that be in general?
Or stage presence, or yeah, okay. If it's
let's say stage presence, like, and just mastering the stage in a better way.
I think that you should see the talk from Mohammed Khatani, The Power of Words. He is doing everything right in that talk. Everything right. Yeah. He uses the stage as a scene, as a theater scene. He stands still. He moves with purpose. So he does everything correctly. In general, I would recommend to look at great speakers and to analyze what are they doing and why does it work so well. That's what, and honestly, that's what I did as well. I have been, when I started to speak, I looked at lots of speakers and tried to find out what are they doing. And I think that looking at the world champions in Toastmasters International, they have a lot of world champions for every year, and if you see them, I mean, then you are looking at the best, and try to copy ideas from them. I think that's definitely the best thing I would recommend you to do. To look at
and maybe just see if I can find a previous recording for me on stage and just spot, like, look at the errors we talked about that people usually do and see if I can spot them and work on them.
If you have a full video of yourself from stage, that is horrible, of course, to look at your own presentation. Unless you like me, very narcissistic, you love everything about myself, unfortunately. No, but honestly, if you looking at yourself, it's, of course, with a critical eye, it's really a good exercise. I agree.
Yeah,
I'm looking at
I'm
others.
going to stage I'm going to stage in 2 weeks. I'm going to just place a phone and record the whole talk, and I'm going to do what you recommended, Svein Harald, and just look through it and see like where I do mistakes and just actively work on them. Thank you so much for the time, and this is so many great advice and tips, and thank you so much. And I have a lot of stuff to work on now on my speech, so I'm very excited.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Max. I love it. I love what we are doing, giving talks.
Yeah.
Changing the world one person at a time, and hopefully many persons if there are lots of people there. But if only one person in the audience takes something with them in, I think that starts a domino effect somehow. So we are here to participate and make this world a better place to live in. And so I appreciate it. I appreciate.
Thank you so much.
Time.
Thank you. Hey, I hope you liked this episode. If you are a speaker and you already have paid gigs, but you want more, bigger stages and more consistency in the amount of bookings, we work one-on-one with speakers to help them get more gigs and increase their sales. Check out Become a Speaker NO in the link below. If you're just starting out or you have had a few gigs and you want to really become a successful public speaker, check out our 8-week bootcamp. Here, we help speakers create their speaker reel, website, positioning, beautiful presentation with amazing slides, storyline, and also land that first big paid speaking gig. Check out the 8-week program below. And I'm always excited to work with passionate speakers who have a very interesting story and valuable advice to share.